So this morning's session is about corporate America and what's happening in the economy. So now a side note. So when I was sitting in your shoes, I was a junior in college, and I was starting to look for a job, and there weren't a lot of books and resources for college students on finding a new job. So I wrote a book called How Hard Are You Knocking? My first book came out in 1995. My second book came out in 2005, and my third one just came out last year called How Hard Are You Knocking? Landing a Job in a Rebounding Economy. And by the way, you're going to get a copy of this in the back of the room. So part of this book is I partnered with University of Michigan, their alumni group, and we did a bunch of research and surveys asking what was happening in the economy. What do they look for when they're hiring college students? What are the expectations of corporate America when you're interviewing? So what we did in this book is took that research and basically documented the entire process of landing a job in today's economy. So kind of that was a parallel career. So since then, I've been giving about 20 to 25 seminars a year. Adam and I put on a program called Your Job and Your Money. As you know, Adam wrote a book called The Money Game. So this is kind of what I've been doing in the corporate world as well as on the seminar side. Make sense? So this is where I'm coming from with that perspective. Rebounding economy. So what's happening in the world? So the market is starting to come back. And the recession hit in early 2007, and it's starting to now come back. At the lowest point was June 2008, was when the economy was at an all-time low. And it's interesting because no matter where the economy is, there's going to be jobs. It just depends what kind of jobs. So I'll give you an example. Guess what the two top industries were in the bottom of 2008? The hottest industries. Pizza and porn. Pizza because it was cheap and you could eat during the recession, and porn because you were depressed. So anyway, so the whole point, I guess, that I'm sharing is that even during a bad economy, there's companies hiring. So now what's happening is you're seeing a lot of industries starting to bounce back. Financial services, consulting services is starting to bounce back significantly because what's happening is now companies that had to lay off people are now wanting to reboot. They want to redesign themselves. They want to make sure they're ahead of the game and hiring you guys. Other industries that are hot is healthcare. You mentioned healthcare. And the reason healthcare is on fire right now is because the baby boomer generation, those are the people 50, 55 and older right now, are starting to retire. In fact, last year was really the first year that this huge population was starting to retire. And what that means is there's 31 million baby boomers. And those baby boomers need things such as hip replacements, knee replacements, senior living, Viagra, pharmaceuticals, ties in with porn, all kinds of things that generation needs, the economy is starting to support. Healthcare is, and now that there's a lot of confusion with Obamacare, you're going to see a lot of activity associated with healthcare. Another hot industry is energy. Any type of energy. And when I mean energy, it's basically broken down into renewables. I mentioned my firm, we do wind farms, we do solar development. So you will find that renewable energy is going to be great in the next 5 years and continue to be great. Transmission lines, natural gas. Are you guys familiar with T. Boone Pickens? T. Boone Pickens is an entrepreneur, and he happens to own the largest aquifer in Texas. And next to an aquifer is typically large deposits of natural gas. By the way, in our country, we have 300 years of a natural gas supply. 300 years compared to crude. So now what T. Boone Pickens has contacted the legislation, and he and Chesapeake, Aubrey McClellan, are trying to pass a bill that require taxis, garbage trucks, and any fleet vehicles to be on natural gas. So now auto companies are starting to build cars that are natural gas. Change definitely a lot of gas mileage. It's cheaper, it burns cleaner, and we have a huge abundance of it. So it gets us off foreign oil, which creates a lot of war, which creates a lot of angst, which creates a lot of turmoil in the Middle East. So what I'm trying to get to is that whatever industry you guys are interested, understand what's going on in the economy. Because there's a lot of markets that happen to be growing. And by the way, every industry I just mentioned need to hire marketing, sales, HR, IT, consulting. Every one of them need you guys. So then when you look at the economy geographically, what I did was I just, and you may not be able to see it, and by the way, I wanted to mention, we're going to put all the presentations on a disk or a flash drive and send it to you guys. So you guys are going to get all these presentations. But the one thing interesting is to look at the pockets of growth in the United States. You're going to see definitely DC, big government. That's the reason that's growing, because more people in government means more services for people that work in government. Then you're going to find the Midwest, Michigan, to be honest, beyond Detroit claiming bankruptcy, filing for bankruptcy, which is insane. I live in Ann Arbor. And Detroit is coming back. But I will tell you, what's happening in the world of manufacturing is manufacturers are starting to come back. For instance, we are the most innovative manufacturers in the world. Yet manufacturers started to move overseas. They started taking their factories to China and things like that. Well, that's because the labor costs were so low. 50 cents an hour. Today, the labor costs are $4 an hour. Shenzhen, China, is southern China. That's where Walmart does all their manufacturing. The labor costs are now $4 an hour. Now, when you're a business owner and you're thinking, do I need to take manufacturing to China or do I leave it here? It's no longer cost advantageous to take it there. So you're going to see manufacturing start coming back. Nashville is called a comeback state, which means these baby boomers went down here to live. It was too hot and humid. They moved halfway back to be next to their grandparents. Texas is on fire. Not really, but Texas is phenomenal right now. Oil and gas, energy, and then obviously Silicon Valley. This is called the Sunshine States. That is the growth area that you're going to see over the next 10 years. The reason I want to share this information with you is I know a lot of you guys, we talk about starting a business. And I know many of you will successfully start a business. That's why you're sitting in this room. Because you're entrepreneurs, you're aggressive, you're driven. But keep in mind that you don't necessarily need to start a business day one. Why not work in an industry? Why not find an industry that you like, that you'd like to start a business in? Work in that industry like I did with Unitech, work in that industry for 3 or 4 years, and then go out and start a business. That's why I'm sharing what industries are hot and then what states geographically are hot. When you look at international, the markets that are growing, obviously China is still growing economically. India is starting to really grow. They have more people than any other country other than China, but they're starting to now build an infrastructure that's honest. There's a lot of corruption in India, and they're starting to clean it up. You're looking at South America, Brazil, they got the Olympics. You're going to see Brazil definitely start growing in the next few years. And then the last country to mention or the continent is Africa. Of the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 8 of those economies are in Africa. And the reason being, they cleaned up the corruption and they're finding a ton of natural resources right here. Ghana, Africa, for instance, they found diamonds, they found oil, and they found natural gas. So whenever a country starts finding natural resources that they now can export, all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of services associated with those exports starting to grow. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to at least, and so do you have any questions about urgent industries? What industries are growing or what geographic markets are hot? Okay. So now, transitioning, what is the market saying and doing? So competition right now is at an all-time high for you guys. It's fortunate because you guys are badasses. It's negative for those that aren't here and negative for the rest of the economy. And I'll tell you why. It's competitive because most businesses that had financial downturn had to lay people off. And when you lay people off, all of a sudden, those people that are sitting on the sideline are willing to take a step back in their career and take your starting salaries. They're willing to take the $48,000 a year, even though they were making $60,000 when they left. They need a job. So now you guys might compete with those individuals that have been in the workforce for a couple of years. So you have to do your best to differentiate yourself among the competition. What have you done? What's the value that you bring me? What's the ROI of me hiring you? Then you look at job market correction. The other challenge with the job market is I don't believe people trust corporate America. We've burned bridges in corporate America. We've laid people off. There used to be a contract where you're like, Patrick, you and I are working for life. You will retire from here. That's no longer the case. So what's happening is corporate America has to do a better job of rebuilding that trust. part of the economic issue right now is economies or businesses want to do more with less, which is a challenge when you're rebuilding trust. So instead of me hiring 5 of you to do a job, I'm going to hire 3, but expect you to get the work done of 5 people. So keep that in mind when you're looking at companies. Hiring contractors and temp to perm, that's another new strategy, especially with Obamacare. And I'm not getting political, I will just tell you from a business owner perspective, the challenge with Obamacare is anybody working over 40 hours or over 30 hours, I have to provide benefits to. So now I have to think, do I want to keep certain employees at 29 hours a year or 29 hours a week? Because benefits are 10 grand a year. So now you're going to start seeing businesses change the way they treat people. And you're going to see this new birth of contracting and temp hires. Now, temp is actually good in some cases. What I mean by that is Amanda, for instance, you might work for a company, or you might like an industry but don't know the company you want to work for. So what might happen is you might say, I'm going to get a temp job. I'm going to bounce around from company to company and do 3 or 4 months assignments until you find an awesome culture that then you can work in. So that's why the temp market is not a bad thing. It's no longer an administrative market like it used to be. Temp agencies used to be hiring a secretary, and that was it. It's no longer. You can hire a CFO temporarily. And that's the nimble economy, and that's what technology does. The last thing is during our survey, when we did the survey, we interviewed about 235 executives for this one. And we were asking the executives, what are you looking for with this group, this millennials? Describe the words. Those are the words they used. We want to hire rock stars. I want to hire athletes. And I said, what are athletes? People that can do multiple things. Like an accountant's not going to come in and say, I'm an accountant, that's all I do. No, I'm an accountant. I might be able to do some market research. I might be able to do some forecasting. I might be able to do some business planning. So businesses today are looking for you, to be honest with you, for people like you, athletes, people that have the ability to do a lot of things. I want people that are hungry. One challenge that you guys have is you guys have a shadow over your head. You're called millennials. And there's a slide up here I'm going to show you that what the world thinks of millennials. But the challenge is that you guys have been raised on technology. With technology comes anonymity. With anonymity, all of a sudden, you start losing the ability to socially interact. And what that means is sometimes you come out of college saying, listen, I've never really learned or had a tough lesson from a mentor. Therefore, I'm coming out of college, and you guys are sometimes called narcissistic, which you have a very high opinion of yourself. And what businesses today are asking from you guys is, I don't want a cocky college student coming to work for me. I know you went to college for 4 years. I know you learned all the things in college. But in my world, you have to ask questions. You have to be a little humble. And that's the one word a lot of executives are using now. I want to hire humble, smart people. People that are willing to say, listen, I don't know everything. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to look for a mentor. I'm going to find people that can beat me up for the next 5 years so I'm kick ass 5 years from now. That's what businesses are looking for. I want humble and hungry. Maturity. Maturity is business acumen. Business acumen is self-actualization. Basically what I mean by that is, for instance, when I'm talking to somebody in the company, and we might have an intern, and if the intern walks up and just interrupts the conversation, or is a close talker and starts standing, they lose that sense of, is this inappropriate or not? The business acumen is probably the one piece that is being lost with technology. Because you're behind a screen, you're texting. There's people in my office that text somebody right next door. Like, what are you doing for lunch? I don't know. Are you hungry? I don't know what, I'm hungry for a sandwich. Well, why don't we, I'm like, stand up and talk to each other. And I'm telling you, that is the one risk. There's so many benefits to technology, but the one risk that you guys have is that you lose that interaction. You lose the ability to have a firm handshake, eye contact, understanding, and empathy. Have you ever heard of the word empathy? Empathy is the ability to understand someone else's reaction. So if I bring somebody in my office and I'm mad, and I'm correcting them and say, you shouldn't have done this, and the person starts getting teary-eyed. There's 2 options that I have. I'm Italian. I could go in for the kill, right? Keep crying, or I could pull back. And to be a good leader, I take him down. No, buying in business. I will downshift. And I will say, dude, maybe I'm just too hyper. Maybe I need to settle down. Maybe I need to wait 24 hours before I send this email. So part of maturity is business acumen. And that's one thing that you guys can learn from your mentors. When you get in the working world, seek somebody out that can teach you the ropes. Ask their opinion. And understand, picking them is very, ask me, ask Mitch, ask Adam, ask Bill. You're going to hear from speakers that part of Succeed Faster is we're trying to build a community with you guys. So I'm going to give you my cell phone. I'm going to give you my email. When you guys have questions, just pick up the phone and call. You know, since every session that we've had, after the sessions, I've gotten calls. I'm going in for an interview tomorrow, and I need to negotiate a salary. We'll spend an hour on the phone, and I'll walk you through the entire process of negotiating a salary. But you have to have the maturity to ask the question. So, hustlers, I want people that work hard. Work hard. Finally, I want people with a personality, and I'm looking for driven individuals. So here's an article. And basically, this article is how the business world, is how the business world, in some cases, describe you guys. Now, you don't need to read it right now. I can walk you through it. The reason I'm sharing this is because you guys are fighting against this first impression. And they're using words. So right now, what the world is saying, the business world, a lot of people in business are saying, college students are natural entrepreneurs. And you guys are. Entry level, and I mean, when I say college students, I don't necessarily mean in college today, in college up to 5 years. But the world believes that you guys are entrepreneurs, that you have a desire, an interest to start businesses. And most importantly, you have been trained in technology, so you have figured out how to take technology and solve business problems. So the nature in which you've been educated, you've had Google your entire life. Think about that. Think about the technology in your face every day. So as you've gotten better at technology, you've created apps, you've created software products, you've created instant messaging. This generation, in my mind, is probably going to be the most innovative generation of our time. Definitely more innovative than my generation. But what the article is saying is that although you're entrepreneurs, you come out of college thinking you're going to start a company, and in some cases you're not asking questions, you're just running into it. So you're lacking the maturity to start a business. And that the article also says, but they aren't acting on whatever entrepreneurial instincts you have. And I believe that's because in some cases, again, you haven't identified necessarily a mentor, or you haven't identified an industry, or most importantly, what we heard yesterday, you haven't solved the problem. Creating a little bit better mousetrap is never going to sell. Creating a mousetrap that nobody's ever seen before and it saves time and money, now you have a product. So it's just like Troy said yesterday. Instead of selling vitamins, selling painkillers. Solving a problem. But then it gets into spendthrifts. Last Thursday, our economy in the U.S., the amount of credit card debt is $1.9 trillion or billion? Trillion dollars. Just passed the amount of, back up. $1.9 trillion of debt, more debt than the world has ever seen, and it's all on credit card. What's now growing past that is the amount of college loan debt. So what's happening is that you guys are coming out of college, and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. So what you guys have to watch out for, and Adam talks about this all the time with his book, is you got to watch out for, don't graduate, buy the brand new car. Buy the 50-inch plasma screen TV. Take everybody out drinking and put, every drink on your credit card. Be the nice guy because now you have a little bit of income. So what the article is talking about is be careful because you're spendthrifts and you're going to be broke. In some cases, people are paying back student debt for 30, 40 years after they graduate. Politically connected. You guys love politics, narcissistic, have a very high opinion of yourself. Listen, I know technology. I just got through college. I can do almost anything. Less religious, but stressed out. Now, the reason I'm sharing this article with you, first of all, I don't believe this room suffers from all these problems. But what you're up against is you're going to be going for interviews to people that are 45, 55, 60 years old, sitting across the table with these impressions. So part of your job search strategy has to be to think about, how do I overcome these perceptions? How do I overcome any negativity that they might have or perceptions about me before I walk in the door? So I want to at least have you recognize that the world sometimes might see you this way without ever meeting you. Make sense? So now let's dive into the job process. So when we did the survey, we asked them, tell us about this generation and what makes them unique. So technology generation. You guys are called digital natives, which means you've been raised on technology. You use technology to solve problems, which is a phenomenal attribute coming out of college right now or joining the work world. I mentioned before, you're going to be the most innovative generation of our time, because not only is the technology you're using solving problems, but your access to information and research and competitor research is enormous, because you have the internet at your fingertips and you know how to use it and navigate. Entrepreneurial and driven, we mentioned that before. Innovative and flexible, meaning, listen, you might want to telecommute. I can live anywhere in the world. You have a global perspective. I think that is one of the best attributes your generation has, is because having a global perspective, there's nothing you can't accomplish. The world is flat. If you guys want to study abroad next semester in Bulgaria, in China, if you would have asked me 10 years ago would I have an office in Shanghai, I'd have thought you're crazy. Like when I talk to my dad is like George Costanza's parents, like an old Italian, and he would tell you that, oh, when you go to China, do they search you? Like I'm going through a prison. And China is very business oriented. But the point is that your generation sees the world as being flat. Information is very quick. Travel is very easy, which is a great perspective. So now, what you guys have to do is, how do you take this and leverage that into the working world? Last thing I'll tell you is one of the descriptions that this room gets, and we heard it a couple times ago, is this is a room full of ringers, which I think is a great term. You guys are the best. You guys are the cream of the crop. You're the people that got past all the other applicants, and you're sitting in this room. How do you leverage that now to be successful in business? So here's what the advice that the survey participants gave us. They said, approach life as a journey. Become wise. Ask questions. Don't just dive into something. Start learning. How can you apply your skills to a problem? Be humble and eager. Confidence to find and work with a mentor. And finally, you have to know your stuff better than everybody else. So when you start in the working world, politics is going to be evident, but what I want you to do is learn your craft. Learn your job better than anybody else. You will be promoted faster. You'll be paid more. You name it. All of that has to do with being a hustler, willing to work harder than someone else. So now, there's 6 steps that I'll share. And it's very easy, and I talk about this a lot, but when you guys start looking for a job, there's one thing that I want you to identify. Identify an industry that you like, that you have passion for. When I say industry, for instance, do you like clothing and fashion? Do you like textiles? Do you like technology? Do you like travel? Do you like manufacturing? So the first thing you got to identify is there an industry that you kind of have a passion for? And the reason I harp on industry is I would much rather hire an accountant who has a 2.5 GPA but a huge passion for real estate than hire an accountant with a 4.0 GPA who doesn't really care about real estate. Because if I have an accountant that loves real estate, all of a sudden that accountant is going to be awesome because they like what I'm doing. They love getting in the nitty-gritty. They're going to find ways to save money, to make more profit. So the first question I always ask every candidate that comes in is, do you like the real estate industry? Tell me about it. Or are you just looking for a job? Second step is you need to approach the job search as a job. One thing that's very disappointing, I hear this a lot. People will spend more time picking out their first car than looking for a job. People spend more time planning a 2-week vacation. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to stay? What are we going to do? What tours are we going to do? Where am I going to travel? Who am I? You spend more time and excitement going after a vacation planning than looking for a job. So follow these steps. The first step is find a passion that find an industry that you're passionate about. The next thing I want you to do is find 5 or 10 companies in that industry. And here's why. The job search process is stressful. Those alumni that you guys are working at PwC, it was a stressful process, right? Going through it. Because you have to be on your A game. You have to go in the interview and be better than everybody else. The reason I say narrow your search down to 5 or 10 firms is because all of a sudden you've taken this huge world and this stressful process and say, you know what? If I just research 10 firms and research the hell out of those 10 firms, learn everything you can about those firms. Where do they have offices? What kind of products? What kind of services? What's their culture like? Have they won any awards? And what I want you to do is start narrowing this funnel down to 5 or 10 firms. Research them like crazy and do your homework. Then what I want you to do is I want you to leverage your resources. Leverage me. If you have 5 firms that you want to work for, email myself, email Adam, email Mitch, the list of firms and say, do you guys know anybody in these 5 firms? Post those 5 firms on Facebook. You have a huge group of friends. And what's so insane, and I'm assuming you got this last night, it is absolutely amazing how connected people can be if they ask the question. Crazy example, I was at Purdue University last spring, and this little girl walks out, and I say little, she was really small, and you'll understand why I'm telling you that she was small. She comes up, and she's kind of shy, and I said, Joy, what do you want to do when you graduate? She goes, I really love ultimate fighting. I'm like, holy mackerel, it's kind of like what Mitch said, like, I was not expecting that. And she goes, if I could work for Ultimate Fighting Championship, oh my gosh, I would go crazy. And she was just, you could see the emotion. She watches it, she loves it. Now, I can't even make this up. Mike Goldberg is an announcer. I don't know if you guys know Ultimate Fighting, but Ultimate Fighting has 2 partners. Joey Rogan bought it, and his partner is named Mike Goldberg. Mike Goldberg is the announcer, so it's always Mike and Joey at the events. Mike's brother, named Todd Goldberg, married my wife's best friend. So I've known Mike Goldberg for years. So I said, Joy, you're not going to believe this. I actually know one of the owners of UFC, or UCF, or Ultimate Fighting. She goes, oh my God, who? I go, Mike Goldberg. She goes, Mike Goldberg! I watched Mike Goldberg! Like, totally excited. I said, here's his cell phone, here's his email, let me call him. She ended up sending him a resume, getting an interview. Now, that was just recently she got the interview. I don't know if she got the job yet. The point of the story is, imagine if Joy would have never asked me, or if I would have never asked Joy, but Joy never said, I want to work for Ultimate Fighting, she would have heard my seminar, she would have gone home, she said, you know what, my resume's better, I'm looking for a job. She would never, ever have a chance to work with UCF. Be pretty tough. So part of the job search process is leveraging you guys, leveraging your network. So identify the industry, take 5 companies that you really would love to work for, send a list of companies out to your partners, out to your friends, and say, do you guys know anybody at these firms? I will tell you, from a corporate perspective, I would much rather interview and hire referrals all day long. Because if I hire a person that's unbelievable, driven, motivated, chances are they're going to be surrounded or know people that are motivated and aggressive. So I want to hire more of those. In fact, at my company, we give $5,000 for referrals. So if you refer somebody and we hire them, you'll get $5,000. Because to me, it's a no-brainer. If I could hire another you, I'll pay all day. So that's the one thing. Identify an industry, identify 5 or 10 companies, and then think about what type of positions you want to work for. When you do your research for the companies, by the way, look at everything. What do they do? Where are their locations? What products do they solve? Or problems do they solve? What kind of solutions do they have? You should never walk into my interview, saying, so where do you have offices? In fact, I would rather you ask me, I read on your website that you just opened an office in Hefei province outside of Shanghai. What kind of projects are you doing there? And I would say, we're working for Walmart. So by you asking the questions, it shows me that you did the due diligence. Cool? Make sense? Questions so far about that step? Third step, Leverage your resources. Get the word out to as many people as you can, and ask for them to share your resume with the company. So if you contact me and I know somebody at those companies, I can share your resume or a referral. And that's what this group can do. If you post on, by the way, you're going to be a part of an Alumni Succeed or Facebook alumni private group. We need to leverage that even more. List the companies, say, guys, I'm looking for a job with these 5 companies. Does anybody in the room have a connection? Don't be shy about that. Step 4, make a great first impression. And I'm not going to get definitely into resume writing per se, but understand that a resume is your first step. Chances are, if you're a referral, I'd want to talk to you and then have you send a resume. But when you send a resume, you got to make sure a couple things. One is that's your very first step into my world. I don't know who you are. So if there's one spelling error, I'm throwing it out. So understand that your resume has to look good. When you give a resume to somebody or one of your friends, ask them to read it and say, does this reflect everything, my background? Does this sound okay? Does this read okay? Are there grammatical errors? But the other thing you got to understand is, what's your online image? 82% of Fortune 500 companies, 82, use Facebook for a reference check. Now, here's the crazy thing. You guys are sitting there saying, no, I'm not going to, you can't get into my Facebook. You're absolutely wrong. Here's why. We're going to interview. And I'm going to talk to Patrick. I'm going to say, Patrick, dude, you were great. I need to talk. I need to have you come back next Tuesday. You fit the job perfectly. Come back next Tuesday. We'll put it together an offer. We'll talk then. So you go home on Friday, and you're like telling your parents, you're telling your friends, dude, the interview went great. And all of a sudden, I Facebook you. Facebook from Tim Augustine. Now you're like, oh shit, right? Because on one hand, yeah, you've heard this. On one hand, you could say, I don't want to let Tim into my world. On the other hand, you might say, well, if I don't, I might not get the job. And I know most people do that. 99% of the people that I send that to accept my invitation. Do not, now, in this case, accept my invitation. I'm fine. I'm not stalking you. But I will tell you, part of the reason I'm sending out that Facebook invitation is I want to give your Facebook to my recruiter and say, find everything you can. We're going to go through your pictures. We're going to see your comments. We're going to see what you believe in. We're going to see if you're crazy. Like, we had one person who was like on his Facebook page, and he was a little off during the interview, so I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, on his Facebook page, he's like, get guns, Armageddon, the government's taking you over, buy a bunker. And I'm like, I'm not hiring this crazy person. So he called, he's like, how's my resume? I'm like, well, we filled the job, sorry. Crazy. Like, I'm not hiring this crazy. My point is, and by the way, being crazy is not a protected class. Like, I'm not going to hire you if you're crazy. So if your Facebook page has crazy pictures and crazy statements and all kinds of things, keep in mind, that is your online image. That's the image that if I've never met you, I might have if Facebook's the only page I go to. So your online reputation is critically important. One thing I'll tell you, everybody in this room should absolutely, positively be on LinkedIn. You're going to hear from Karan tomorrow. LinkedIn is the #1 business site that I use for recruiting. It's what I use for networking. It's what I use for sales. I can go in and say, who's currently working for this wind farmer, wind developer? We go from there. So LinkedIn, your online image. Last thing is attire and interview. We could talk about that for hours about the interview. But the most important thing that you guys have to understand is leverage your network of people when you're looking for a job. Because the more contacts you have that I can share your resume and your name with a friend of mine, the better. Understand the role and negotiate. So now you've been through a phone interview. There's 4 types of interviews that you're going to face. There's a phone interview, which lasts about 20 minutes. And a phone interview is where I screen you out. What that means is I'm going to get 20 candidates, and I only want to interview 5. So I'm going to get on the phone. We're going to talk for 20 minutes. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you pass that, then I'm going to bring you in for a face-to-face. Second interview, face-to-face. Face-to-face is where I want to meet you and see if we connect. I want to see if you look me in the eye, if you have a firm handshake. I want to see how eager you are, how much you know about my business. And that's the first question I ask. Do you like the real estate market? Do you like the industry? And by the way, why are you interviewing with Atwell? Third type of interview is a group interview. A group interview is called a stress interview. And a stress interview is simply a room full of people. So I don't want you to freak out. When you walk into the office and there's 3 or 4 people standing there, understand that they're trying to stress you out. That's why it's called a stress interview or a group interview. take your time. Take your time, answer every question that they ask, and just understand that now it's a group perspective to see how you operate under pressure, operate with a little stress. The fourth interview is called a meal interview. And a meal interview is typically going to take place when you're in a customer-facing job. So if I know that you're going to have to go out with my client, I'm going to take you out for a meal interview because I want to see what your manners are. So if you're snapping your fingers at a waiter, if you're chew with your mouth open, all those things. So keep in mind, a meal interview, it's still an interview. So here's a couple tips. Eat before you go. A meal interview is not to feed you. Order something that's easy to eat, but eat before you go so you're not starving during the interview. You're going to be doing most of the talking. Second thing is never drink alcohol during a meal interview. Even if I get a triple shot of Jack Daniels with a tequila chaser. Now, you'll know if I'm stressed out, right? You'll be like, I don't know if I want to work with that guy. I need another martini, right? Do you want to work? So the point that I'm trying to bring is when you're in a meal interview, you're on stage. Bring money with you in case you have to pay. By the way, if you have to pay, don't work for that company. But most importantly, show your best manners. Never send food back. Understand that it's a test to see how you're going to get along with clients. So those are the 4 types of interviews. Next thing is negotiate. So I want to spend just 2 minutes on salary negotiation. And then I can open up for just a couple minutes of questions. Is that salary negotiation starts with education. So the more you know about my company, the more you know about the job, and the more research you've done, the more power you have. So if I bring you in, and Nate, Nate, thank you very much for the interview. Thanks for coming in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an offer letter for Nate. So Nate comes in, I'm going to say, Nate, thank you very much for coming in. You are a rock star, dude. Dude, I already ordered your laptop. I got you an iPad. We got a cubicle set up. I ordered your business cards. We're ready to go. Here's the offer, $50,000 starting salary. We'd like you to start next Monday if possible. All you need to do is sign right here. So Nate, if you could just sign that off. Nate, if you could just sign that. My goal, that was a joke by the way, my goal is to have Nate sign the offer letter right away. Because keep in mind, as a recruiter, my job as a recruiter is to close Nate. And then move on to the next candidate. So what you want to do is never sign in the office. Never sign the offer. What I'd like Nate to do is say, Mr. Augustine, thank you very much for the offer of $50,000. I'm very excited working with your company. However, I need 2 days to talk it over with my family. I don't care if you talk to the dog. I don't care if you talk to your friends. The goal is you have more power over the phone than you do face-to-face. So then, over the phone, Nate calls me 2 days later. Mr. Augustine, thank you very much for the offer. $50,000 sounds great. Based on market research, and that's what you want to say, those words, based on research, I was really hoping to get closer to 55 to 65. So you see what I just did? It's called the 10% rule. Negotiating 10% is usually allowed by recruiters. Like I have 2 recruiters. We give 2 recruiters the ability to negotiate. I'd say 10% is fine. Anything above that, you got to get approval. So I offered him 50. He came back with 55, 10%. But now 55 was your bottom. So Nate could say 55 to 65. Now you gave me a range of $10,000. And there's a couple reactions that I could have. The one reaction might be, Nate, fine. I'm going to take you to 55. Or you know what? Let's meet in the middle. Let's take it to 52.5. That's 2 options. So now you just made $2,500. Chances are most organizations will say, I can't take you above 50. That's the market rate right now. I'm hiring 3 other people, and team member equity is very important. Then I want Nate to say, I understand. Is it possible to have a performance review and a wage review 6 months from now? So if I do a great job, could I be bumped up to 55? All of a sudden, you've locked in your wage increase 6 months from now. So never let them just close with, nope, take it or leave it. Other strategies as you grow in your career might be to negotiate more vacation, might be to negotiate more benefits, a number of other categories. But for a starting salary or starting job, I recommend 10% or ask for a 6 months wage review. And it's a win-win for me. I don't have to pay you right now the $2,500 or the $5,000. I can wait 6 months, so I'm saving on interest, and you're going to bust your hump in the next 6 months, so it's a win-win for me. Make sense? And then lastly is understand the keys to success. Take 90 days. When you get hired, take 90 days and learn everything you can about these 5 categories. First category, company knowledge. What does the company do? Products, services. What does the company do? And where did they come from? What's the history? Number 2, what are all the products or services that you're going to be involved in? Remember what I said before. You become the best at your job. Know everything about your job. So what products or services are you going to do? Number 3, organizational structure. What's the chain of command? Who do I report to? What's my team look like? What's my team's expectations? Number 3, processes. Process orientation. How do things get done in the company? How do I order a stapler? How do I go on vacation? How do I cut, if I have a doctor's appointment, who do I tell? How does that process work? If I want to buy a new lamp, how does that process work? Last thing is political effectiveness. I'm sorry, back up. Personal effectiveness. Personal effectiveness is what are the expectations that your supporting leader have of you? So what are the expectations? And here's the best question to ask. In an interview or when you start your job. In 1 year, you're going to give me a wage review. Or in 6 months, you're going to give me a wage review. Or a year, you're going to give me an annual review. At the end of the year, when I have my annual review, what are your expectations? What makes a successful year? So if there's 5 things that you want me to accomplish, tell me day 1 what those are so I know. Make sense? So those are the 5 things. Don't come into the company in the first 90 days and just, trying to go with the flow. Because there's going to be politics, by the way. There's going to be this camp that wants to get you engaged. There's going to be this camp that wants to get you engaged. So the first 90 days, just stay under the radar. Learn these things as much as you can. And at the end of the 90 days, then have a meeting with your supporting leader or your boss. Take your boss out to breakfast. And I'm not kidding. Take your boss out to breakfast. I know it sounds crazy, but say breakfast is safe. It's not dinners, it's not drinks, it's breakfast. And most people, I'll get up early before work, so say, it's been 90 days, I really like working with you. Is there any possibility of us having breakfast 7 in the morning tomorrow, my treat? I just want to kind of meet with you and understand expectations. 3 questions that you want to ask, and then I'll wrap it up. What do you want me to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing? Those are the 3 questions. What do you want me to start doing that I'm not doing today? What do you want me to stop doing that pisses you off, that you don't like? And what things am I doing that you want me to continue doing? And most importantly, what are your expectations of me and how am I doing? The one thing that you guys have to do, and your career will skyrocket, is you have to manage up. And it's not malicious, but I think a lot of times middle managers or managers in general, they're not thinking that, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to Patrick in 3 months. Patrick knows I like him. Patrick knows I'm happy. If I wasn't happy, I'd tell him. I don't need to talk to Pat. The problem in corporate America a lot of times is that there's not a lot of interface and there's no expectations set. So part of your job is managing up as much as possible. Questions about the job search process, the 6 steps. Yes, please. You can, but you got to remember what I said about reading their reaction. You got to be careful because you're treading on thin ice. If you don't want to be cocky and say, give me 52.5 and they meet it, or give me 55, they meet 52.5, and then you're asking for more. So really read their reaction. What I would do is 2 things. It's okay to combo. I would say I was hoping to get, based on my research, 55 grand to 65 grand. And they say 52.5. You can come back and say, well, how does the performance review process work? How can I grow my salary? When are wage increases provided? When does it grow? Who do I need to talk to? What are your expectations? Then you can dive into those. I would be careful about having both of those in the same reaction. Yeah, Joel. Ask questions until I look at my watch. And I'm not kidding. That's the business acumen. So if you're asking me questions and you see that I'm like, yes, our benefits are Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Yes, you will have to start at 8 o'clock. And you sense that, I recommend having 10 type questions and asking about half of those. But ask questions that you can't find on the internet. I don't like people that ask questions just to ask questions. Like people say, well, where are your offices located? Go to my website. I'll sum my reaction up. I hire people I like. So in a conversation, like if you're at the bar last night and you're talking to somebody and you ask them a question, they fired a question back, how would you react, right? In some cases, I just want to get to know you. So if we're having a great conversation and you're asking a question and it's engaging, we're both involved in this conversation, we're courting each other, keep asking questions. But you have to understand, we're trying to build a relationship, and that's why the face-to-face interview is so important. Because I want a handshake. I want to look in the eye. The one thing I will tell you, people do like to talk about themselves. So if you turn it around and say, tell me about your career. Why do you like working here? What are the challenges that you've seen? Do my skills match, similar to yours or similar to what the company's looking for? Ask a couple questions like, what are the characteristics of your best performers? So what are the characteristics of your top-notch guys, top-notch people? What are your expectations of me? Those kind of questions are great, but if I sense that you're just asking questions to keep the conversation going, then there's diminishing returns. Now I'm like, dude, you're going to drive your team nuts if I hire you. Because that's what I'm thinking. Will you fit into the team that you're working for, or will you drive them crazy? Make sense? Good. Next question. Yeah, Patrick. By the way, same problem. He asked, what would it change if you're an alumni 6 or 7 years? This process, by the way, I have educated multi-million-dollar CEOs on this process. And it's a simple process. I didn't make it up. But the point of the process is narrowing your funnel. So follow the same process. If you're looking for a career change and you've been in the market for 10 years, you'll follow the same process. If you're going for an MBA, and like Northwestern, when I went to Northwestern for my MBA, they interviewed me. It was the exact same process. Tell me about yourself. Do you fit within our culture? Do you fit within Kellogg's MBA program? Define success. Tell me about your accomplishments. So everything that I just outlined, I believe you'll use for the rest of your life. I truly, honestly believe it. And the one thing that has stayed true my entire career is never take a job for money, ever. And so part of the slide is the one thing every executive I know, every CEO, friend of mine that makes a lot of money would tell you the same thing. Take a job first for personal satisfaction. Do you like the culture? Do you feel respected? Do you like getting up and going to work? We had an opportunity to meet Red Frog with Nate the other day. And you can see the energy in this business. You can see high fives. Everybody's a good friend. You can see that the culture is full of energy, which raises the expectations of everybody in the office. Find a culture that matches your culture. Personal satisfaction, number one. Number two, find an opportunity for professional development. Do they encourage education? Do they pay for an MBA? Do they pay for a CPA? Will they pay for you to go to training? Is your CEO or is your boss, is your supporting leader encouraging you to read certain books? Are they sending you to programs like this? Nate's did. Nate's company sent him to Succeed Faster. That's an awesome culture because they're supporting professional development. Lastly is financial reward. And here's the catch. If you're great at the first two, if you love what you're doing, and you're growing professionally, you're going to get paid very, very well. In fact, your wage will raise much faster because you're killing it. You're doing an unbelievable job, but you have to understand, you have to weigh pay with the amount of energy. So if you're not putting a lot of energy into my work, if you're not putting a lot of value, if you're not creating value in my business, why in the world should I keep increasing your wage? So you have to understand, am I putting in the effort? Am I rewarded for the effort that I provide? And by the way, compensation is a lot of things. Flex time is a benefit. Do I get to work from home? Do they get me an iPad where I can work remotely? Do they trust me? Where when I'm working from home, my boss is not a micromanager. That's a compensation benefit. Are the benefits, by the way, your health care benefits will go up in the next few years. And understand, when you get your first job, ask your employer, what's my benefit cost? What's my premium payment? For instance, if you buy my Cadillac plan, you'll have to pay $220 a month. But it's the best Cadillac healthcare plan you can get. So if you know it's going to cost you $200 a month, what if you negotiated $2,400 in your starting salary to offset the benefit costs? Make sense? So when you're looking at the financial reward, it's the entire package. So when you're looking for a job, keep those things in mind. And Patrick, back to your question, I will tell you those 6 steps are the same no matter what. The last slide that I just showed you is absolutely your whole career. You'll look back 20 years from now and you'll say, I remember when Tim Augustine said personal satisfaction is most important. Because you guys are going to get up in the morning, one morning, and say, God, I hate going to work. At that point, leave. People come to my company all the time and say, do you have employment agreements? Do you make us fill out employment agreements? I said, no, if you don't like working here, I want you to leave. I want you to stay. I'm creating a culture where you will come back to work. So understand, culture to me is the absolute most important attribute you can look at in a company. Question. Absolutely. So first of all, a non-compete is very hard. It's very hard to say that you can't work in the industry where you have expertise. So most non-competes don't hold up in court. Now, you're going to come back, I got sued! So the first thing, you can absolutely negotiate the time or the distance. The one negotiation piece that I always like to educate people on is that instead of necessarily saying it's 2 years nationwide, maybe it's 90 miles from the entity. Or if it's online, in the online verbiage, I don't know a lot about. We don't deal with that, but you probably do, like Match.com, right? You can negotiate in that case time, make it 1 year, or have them specify, can you create a website that matches people? Or do they not want you to use Match.com? Or do they not want you to use the same formula to match people or the same format? So maybe they have proprietary rights to the way that they match people. Like, is it like the DNA 2-3? What's the new one? It has DNA 1-2-3. There's a new dating. I heard it on the radio. Match.com. What's some other ones? So eHarmony and Match.com don't use the same formula to match people, right? So in your non-compete, it might say you can't use our proprietary process to match people. But those are the ways to negotiate. And in fact, a lot of times you could say, listen, I don't feel comfortable. I'm in this industry. Do they still want to hire you? Next question. Yes, Spence. He said, when you're negotiating, the reason you have more power on the phone is I will kill you face to face. Here's why. And like when we're negotiating, I can say, Spencer, dude, I got you business cards. We're going to iPad. I can't wait, man. You're going to fit in this culture. You're going to join the softball team, the golf league. I can oversell and get you so excited about the job that you will sign right face to face. And then I'll even challenge and say, what? And this is kind of the slime ball move, but I would say, well, why aren't you comfortable signing this? What more do you want in the job? What can we negotiate? So face to face, because you don't negotiate every day, you're not as strong. We're over the phone. All of a sudden, I don't have the same power I do face to face. Over the phone, all of a sudden, you're a little bit further away from me, right? So now when you're asking questions, I need you to take the job. That's why negotiation, a little more power over the phone. Does that make sense? Okay, one more question. I know we're running over a little bit. Yes, please. Identify all the skills and attributes that you have. Have a section on your resume, valued attributes. Sell your experience. I will tell you, education is important with some industries, accounting and finance and some technical industries. But I will tell you, I'm more interested in experience far more than education. Because you getting a bachelor's degree in management, it's interesting, but your management degree, you may have taken 3 classes that are pertinent to the job that I'm going to hire you for. But if you come and say, I've been doing the sales job in the real estate market for 5 years, that's much more valuable. I'm not saying quit college. I'm not saying that at all. But I would tell you, highlight your experience, both on your resume and in person. So talk about how your experience relates to my business. So if you came to me and say, I have a digital marketing experience, and one of the things that I noticed is that your website at Atwell has this feature, this feature, this feature. Maybe you could upgrade it, and I could show you what to do because I have a lot of experience with social media helping other companies. So now you've related your experience to helping my firm and adding value. Does that make sense? So highlight your experience much more than anything else, especially if there isn't a degree to fall back on. Here's my contact information. We're going to be setting up books, or the books are set up in the back. Please feel free to take one. If you already have one, give it to one of your friends. I still want you to have one. Keep in contact. I know we ran over. Any final questions? Okay. Good. I know we ran over. Let's take 10 minutes. Come back at 10 after 10. Thank you very much.